everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Let's see, where are you guys joining us from? Who do we have in here? There we go. Oh, Jeff's joining us from Belleville. Hey, Jeff, I got your email. I will respond to you. I'm happy to help you with that, making that transition. Oh, Corey's here. That's so nice, Corey. You're on March break. You're supposed to be sleeping still. It's 9 a.m. Dave from Bracebridge, Aaron from Ottawa, Ben from Sarnia, Jacqueline. Hey, Jacqueline. Perfect. So I think you know Corey already, right, James? Hello, Jacqueline. So who has kids home on March break right now? Corey would for sure. Ben, I think yours went back. Aaron, I know your wife runs a daycare, so you always have kids home. You have 4. That's a lot of kids. 3, yes. Oh, Jacqueline's joining us from Waterloo. Hi, Barb. There we go. So, Corey, what are you doing with the rest of your March break? James said you guys didn't get, you got a little bit of snow over the weekend, but not a ton. Hey, everyone who's just jumping in. We're just catching up and talking about where everybody's from and oh, hi. Hi. Oh, Corey hopes to ski. Yeah, I think you and about a million other people. I was surprised. I was in Northern Ontario earlier this week, and I was just telling James we had a storm, and they were talking about 50 to 60 centimeters of snow. Now, we definitely didn't get that much, but we got a good chunk. And then I'm down right now in I'm north of Barrie, and there's very little snow here. I was kind of surprised. I expected to have lots and lots of snow, but I gather you guys got rain down here. Perfect. And what's everybody doing in the world of real estate? Anybody got anything great planned for April? Feel like everybody's coming out of hibernation? Any buildings you're buying? Any private lending you're doing? Looking at a fourplex. Ooh, nice. You're in Huntsville for work. A bunch of snow yesterday, just beginning in the REI world. Well, we're happy to have you join us, Dave. We promise to be kind, don't we, James?
That's
Oh,
right.
Jeff's opening a new office. Good for you, Jeff. I think that's one of the things I find, James. I don't know if you've found this, but real estate people are super welcoming.
Oh yeah, of course. Everybody loves to be sharing of information because that's how you learn in real estate. There really isn't a formalized education program like for other stuff. You don't take a real estate degree like you take a marketing degree or an engineering degree. So a lot of us just learn by being in the industry, and everybody seems to want to pay it forward because everybody learned from asking great questions and showing up to stuff like this with other people.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think the other kind of flip side of it is like people who are new to real estate, they're always like, well, what do I talk about? And I'm like, honestly, real estate investors, just ask us a question. We'll talk forever, especially about ourselves and like the deals we're doing and all the things we've learned. I really feel like a room full of investors is super welcoming.
Yeah, absolutely. It's cool to be at a live networking event too, or I know the online forum that you guys have coming up where there's going to be a really nice tech platform that allows people to feel like they're connected and be able to network. It's so amazing what you learn in just like the conversations in between seminars too.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And thanks for that segue, James. That was fantastic. James, for those of you who are new to our community, James is talking about the Canadian Real Estate Resilience Summit, which Corey and I are going to be hosting again in October. And we're really excited about that. I'll have a little more information for you at the end. Ellie said, good morning. We're considering New Brunswick. Okay, interesting. There's a lot of investors out there in New Brunswick. Sunny just closed on a triplex in Florida, my first in the US. Congratulations, Sunny. That's amazing. And Michael is replacing a single family dwelling with 16 units. Wow, that is a big upgrade. Good for you. Purchased a sixplex in Calgary. Amazing. Calgary's a fantastic market. You must be so excited to hear from James as he's going to do a quick update on the Calgary market and let us know what's going on out there. Fantastic. Good job, Daryl. Absolutely. Okay. So I will do a quick share and we'll do the intro for the webinar today and then we'll get into it. James, I'm so glad you could join us and thank you to all of you who are joining us either on your lunch hour from work or perhaps, from bed because it's 9 o'clock in the morning. James, I'm glad you were able to get up and get going today for us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Best way to start a Monday.
Absolutely. All right. So, my name is Elizabeth Kelly. I'm so glad that you are joining us today. Our guest is James Knull, and he is joining us from BC, but has a tremendous presence in Alberta. And he's kind of known, I think you're kind of known as the Calgary guy, aren't you, James?
Well, I'm sorry to disappoint Daryl there, but I'm actually from our headquarters is in Edmonton, so I can speak to Calgary, but the majority of the business we do in Alberta is northern Alberta, Edmonton area.
Gotcha. Okay. So, but I sort of like when I want to know about Alberta in general, I come to you. So it's not just the
Absolutely.
market knowledge that you have, but it's the network that you have that you're so generous to share with people who want to learn more too.
Oh, exactly. Anybody that wants to do anything in Calgary, we've definitely got you covered.
Love it. Okay. So, because we know James absolutely loves multifamily, and of course, Corey and myself love multifamily as well. So, we have a little treat for you. Everyone who attends my webinars between now and the multifamily conference on May 26th to 28th of this year will be eligible to win a ticket. So someone from attending today's webinar, James is going to pick the lucky winner at the end and someone will be given an elite ticket to the multifamily conference in Toronto, May 26th to 28th. If unfortunately you don't win the ticket today, there is a QR code, so make sure you grab your ticket. I was just on the in a meeting with Seth Ferguson last week, and I can't believe how big this event is going to be. I attended the first one last year, and this one's going to be like 3 times as big as it was. So he's doing an outstanding job. Just a quick reminder to everybody. I know 3 years of pandemic, we should all know Zoom, but just a reminder in case you're a little bit rusty, on the left or on the right hand side with your chats, you will see there's a drop down there. It defaults to hosts and panelists, which means if you type in the chat box, James and I are the only people who's going to see that. So make sure you click the drop down, change it to everyone. Today's webinar is going to be super engaging. We're going to be looking for ideas and thoughts and feedback. So please make sure you click the drop down. If you have specific questions and answers that we don't want to lose in the chat discussion itself, please use the Q&A tab. There's a number of questions people have messaged in advance. So we will we'll start off with those first, give everyone a chance to warm up. And then of course we will move on to the ones that people are asking at the time. And I do have a quick disclaimer, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. I'm a huge believer in hiring experts for all your different, needs, whether it's an accountant or a lawyer, any of those things. Make sure you're always doing your own research, talking to people about their experiences, hire the correct teams, and then make your decision. When it comes to real estate, the more due diligence we do, generally, the better off we are. So our agenda for today, we're going to do quick welcome and introductions. We're going to get right into the Ask Me Anything, and then we'll do a webinar wrap up and the giveaway for the multifamily ticket. I, of course, am your host, Elizabeth Kelly, and I am a full-time real estate investor and coach. I'm coming up to 20 years in the field, and I absolutely love doing what James and I talked about at the beginning of the webinar, which is helping to build a community to support and help investors grow. I've done rent-to-owns, multifamilies, a little bit of wholesaling, some BRRRRs, and I've also been a property manager for 15 years. So I basically love everything to do with real estate, and I would love the opportunity to be able to help new investors who are looking at getting into it, help you make the right decisions and support you and your growth. We, of course, have James with us today. James is a realtor. He's one of Western Canada's top producing agents and the team leader for the Mogul team. He has grown and expanded into multiple cities, consistently sets the industry standard for exceptional service and performance. And I do have to say that when I was introduced to James, his response time was phenomenal. Corey introduced us, and responses right away, super on top of things. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but sometimes it feels like, we're trying to work with someone, and it's heavy and it's hard, and we keep messaging people and calling people and trying to get in touch with them, and that can be an indicator that it's not the right fit. So James, I respect that a lot, that you are super keen and excited to help people grow their real estate businesses. And
Well,
he also, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say thank you for such the kind words in the introduction, but you're keeping her going, so I'll sit back and enjoy.
Well, I just wanted to highlight the Mogul Mastermind, which is a meetup group in Western Canada. So, for those of you who are joining us from Western Canada, by all means, connect with James, learn more about the Mogul Mastermind and how you can work more with him. So, we have some questions for today, and I love the synchronicity because, James, when you and I talked initially, we had said that one of your sort of uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, one of your superpowers was organization. And ironically, multiple people had reached out and said, "Hey, I need help getting organized or staying organized." So I think that's going to be the first thing that we'll kind of tackle today. There were a couple of questions on partnerships. And then there was one specific question on buying properties throughout Canada. And someone had said, just started my real estate investment journey, planning to sell my single family home in Montreal to purchase a multiplex in Toronto, which my family and I will live in. Is now a good time to do this, or would you advise waiting a year? So I'm so excited to dig into that one too. But let's start with the tips and the organization. And let's see, I think it was Dion who asked that question and somebody else. Hey, Mary. So how many people here, let's just ask, how many people here are struggling with organization and multitasking, trying to prioritize your real estate business, but you've got a full-time job, maybe you've got some kids, you got other responsibilities, and you're like, where do I find the time? I'm overwhelmed. I'm not organized. I can't find things. Anybody else, or is it just Sunny and I who sometimes June feels that? Yeah, Mary, absolutely. All right, James, share your wisdom with us.
Sure,
What do you
sure.
recommend?
Well, I think that one of the things that ends up happening to us as real estate investors is we underestimate our own potential. And what I mean by that is a lot of us start the journey thinking, okay, I'll buy a rental property or two. And then before you know it, you have 15 or 20 of the darn things. And what ends up happening, I find, is that a lot of, and this applies to a lot of other businesses as well, but a lot of people start with bad data management habits that are
Mm,
perfectly acceptable when you have one income property. So let me give an example of what that looks like. Let's say that you're in the process of analyzing and buying one single income property, and everything feels exciting and intense and overwhelming, and you're just ripping away and doing it. And by the time that, let's call it a 2, maybe 3 month process is up, the entire desktop screen of your computer is littered with random files that have random names. Some of them are PDFs, some of them are Word documents, some of them are Excel documents. Maybe there's 3 or 4 different versions of your purchase agreement because of different rounds of negotiation. In addition to that, now you've got legal bills, legal statements, your conveyancing package from the lawyer. And if you're combining that with an email inbox, well, now you've got some important information in your email inbox, some important information scattered about your desktop. And, you think about it like a messy bedroom. You're like, well, it's my messy bedroom and I know where I put everything down, so it's easy for me to pick it back up. The problem is that's easy to deal with when you have one property, maybe manageable when you have two. But the second you get up there and have a ton of different properties, if you have if you have started your investing career with bad data management habits, you're gonna just it's a problem that magnifies almost exponentially. So what I'll show you guys is I'll just give you a couple of quick and easy tips that I use. So this is actually something I was working on this morning. This is the desktop to my computer. I always file everything away. Now I would recommend that you use something like Dropbox. So, Dropbox is a cloud-based um, file storage. You could also use Google Drive. You could also use iCloud, whatever you like. Now, I'm going to show you what we do for bookkeeping. This is Office or a Microsoft's version of this called Office, which gives you a drive called SharePoint. So I'm opening through SharePoint, I'm opening our OneDrive. So if we go into our accounting, we'll go to one of the companies here. Every month we post receipts, and I'll show you how this is for running a fairly large company, but you can see that we've got the date that it was posted, the 5-digit number, which is called a chart of account, which directly relates to the categorization of that expense in QuickBooks, and then a description verbally of what it was. So you can see pretty much everything in here. Looks like this Amazon order doesn't have a COA yet. Yeah, so the end of the month ones haven't been tagged with the COA. We go into February, same thing. Everything's labeled with its COA. Now, you might not need to be as sophisticated as having a chart of accounts, but what I would recommend doing is our general standard is date stamping, whatever it is. So date stamp, um, month, date, year. The reason we go and make sure you put a 0 in front of days that are 0, because some programs, if you put 11, it'll actually put the 11 at the top with the ones, which is kind of weird. Anyways, it seems like a small thing until you have to go back and relabel 200 or 300 files because you want them to be an O1 instead of just a 1. So date, and then the next thing we do is a numerical reference point. So for you guys as real estate investors, that numerical reference point is probably the address. So date dash address dash what it is. And if you label all your files in that way, it becomes very, very easy to go back and find what you're looking for, especially in the context of multiple income properties over multiple years. Fast forward 5 years from now and you want to sell a property and you're thinking, hey, where's the papers from when we bought this place? um, you know, when we're thinking about what happened over the last 2 months, it's fresh in your memory. You can sort through the clutter, no problem. But imagine a property, for those of you that have been an investor for a while, imagine a property you bought 5 years ago and trying to remember all the minute details. The second thing I'd recommend is I haven't done my email yet. I basically caught right into the office this morning, but so for our email. So here's a whole bunch of emails that have come in. What I would recommend is having a subfolder for every rental property. So I'll just show you on the real estate side. I've got a subfolder for every single active buyer that's currently being in communication with us. So we look at Adam, and here's all of the communication with Adam. So again, if you, some people just use the search tool in their inbox to find what they're looking for and allow their email inbox to get thousands and thousands and thousands of emails accumulated in there. I personally like having subfolders for anything that's important. So a subfolder for every property I own, and then maybe a subfolder for tenant communication, one for legal, one for acquisition, that sort of thing. So for people that aren't naturally organized, it can seem like a huge, overwhelming pain in the butt to come up with files, folders, and a naming convention. But I promise you, it doesn't take that long to come up with. Yeah, so Mary, I completely agree. The only emails in my inbox are ones I haven't read or things that are actionable. Everything else gets filed and foldered away. That's if you, for those of you who think this might be the way to go, if you Google like inbox zero, that's kind of the lingo or the technique that describes that way of dealing with your email inbox. So for those of you who want to do a little bit of a deeper dive, inbox zero, if you're finding you're a little bit of overwhelm with your email inbox. Back to filing and naming convention. Once you have it, the beautiful thing about a filing convention and a naming convention is you only have to remember one thing, and that one thing is how your files are named. You don't have to remember each individual piece of information. So if Elizabeth came to me and said, hey, that property that we bought in 2019, I think we bought it in the first half of the year. Um, you know, I think there was an issue with the basement. What's going on? I can go to the year 2019, go to look for her name, and there's all the files neatly labeled out. Nothing is more frustrating than having to open one PDF at a time and skim through it and read it. Again, the shortcut that I see some people becoming strong with is using the search feature. So I'll show you what that means. If this is the search feature right here. So you search for what you think the file name should be. And then once you open the file, you use the search feature to search within the file. So for example, you can, if you have a PDF, this is you use the search and then you can find a keyword. But I'll tell you give yourself one heck of a head start with the search features if everything's labeled correctly to begin with, because then you go from an hour of taking shots in the dark. I do a search for title. Okay, now you see 50 documents come up that all have the word title in them. And you click through 5 to 10 to 15 of them. You find the title you're looking for, and now you're searching through that. It feels like a lot of work if you're not used to being organized because you're like, I need to stop and rename every file as I'm going. That's just going to slow me down. I'll do it later. That mindset is the mindset that's going to create this ever growing and ever intimidating pile of filing work to do. The thing about I find getting caught up with your filing, so to transition, okay, have a system, remember the system. I've been working the same filing system for my entire career. So I knew early on that if I had to remember every little itty bitty bit of information that came my way, my brain would be scrambled. I'd get nothing done. So I created a filing system. I followed the filing system. I haven't changed it in 20 years, and I'll probably be filing my files the exact same as I do right now when I'm old and gray, because it's so entrenched in my brain the way I like my files labeled and organized that I can find anything like that from any time in the last 15 years. The only thing that really held us up is we went paperless at the start of COVID. So we had a lot of one of the realtors on our team, actually, Devin. He has two junior high age young bucks, and we put those boys to work, and they basically hung out in the office for 2.5 weeks, scanning every single piece of paper we had, and so we became fully paperless at the tail end of COVID. There, that's another story. But they sat there, right click, rename everything they scanned. Everything's perfectly done by the filing conventions. We've got it all. And the nice thing about it being on a cloud, pretty much everybody knows what cloud computing is. But let's say the computer I'm at right now, I take my coffee and I just dump it directly onto this computer and it's fried. I would go to Staples, buy a new computer, put my logins into all of my cloud-based accounts, and the new computer would look exactly the same as what I saw on the old computer as it died. Zero interruption, zero loss of data or any progress. So that's to move into the idea of, oh my gosh, I'm that person that has a big old pile of mess now. What do I do? I don't have time to do it because I'm so busy. It's very, very similar to if anybody's gone on a big hike, for example, and you look and you're like, oh, that mountaintop looks so far away, and you have no idea how long it's going to take. You think, oh, that's going to take 3 days to get there. And the trail guides actually says, the average person can get there in 4 hours. My point is, most of the time when you're looking at a task like this, you end up procrastinating on getting started because in your mind you think it's bigger than it actually is. And so if you're using the excuse, well, I won't have time to finish it, so I might as well not get started. This is not that kind of project. Your organization is granular. It's itemized. It's atomic. You can relabel 30 files while you're watching your favorite show, put them away, and then tackle the next 30 files the next night. So I would challenge you to develop your system and follow your system. Um, that's those are fundamentals. I can get super granular, but this isn't, James's TED talk on how to do file organization, bookkeeping, and data management. That's just a couple of really good nuggets to get you guys started. Is manage your inbox and name your files correctly, and then have a filing, so like a naming convention and a filing convention. Those two pieces right there will get you well on your way to feeling more organized and feeling less overwhelmed.
I love it. I love it. I completely agree with you, James. I think that those pieces, I mean, those were pieces that we discovered sort of on our journey, but not right at the beginning. And I want to encourage you guys that the place to start to implement all these great tips that James has given us is literally to write down what your obstacles are right now. So for a lot of people, um, when we're thinking about getting started with an organization system, there's things that make it harder for us. So the first one is the mindset piece. And I want you, James touched on it, and it was so insightful because so many of us are perfectionists. We want everything to be perfect. So we don't want to start organizing until James, you have to click the drop down for everyone. I'm the only one who can see what you did.
Oh, shoot.
Which was
Okay.
awesome. I think you were responding to someone who said who changed it to host some panelists for you.
That's right. I was trying to respond to somebody's question without killing your flow, Elizabeth. So
That's
there you
okay.
go.
So one of the most important things that we can do is to adopt the right mindset. And my mindset around filing and organization is done is better than perfect. So would I love to open my file folders and see everything perfectly labeled the way that James has? I would love that, but it's not always realistic. When we're on the go, when we're traveling, sometimes there's a typo or, someone else's, putting stuff into our filing. So done is better than perfect. And it's more important that you start than it is that everything's perfect. The second thing I really want to encourage you to do is make sure you have a dedicated workspace, because I work with a lot of new investors, and they don't have a home office. They have like a corner of the kitchen table or the dining room table, and like their kids come and borrow their laptop, and then they're looking for the charger, and they know that they took notes on a webinar they attended, but they don't know where it is and they can't find it. So the first step in this whole process is create this dedicated workspace for yourself where you can put things down and then come back to it. So if you only have 30 minutes a day to work on real estate initially, you want to make sure you're not spending 15 of those 30 minutes looking for your computer charger. You want to know that you're going to come and sit down and optimize your efficiency. The second thing is make the commitment to go digital right from the very beginning. So from your lawyer, there's a good possibility you're going to get a closing package and it's going to be all paper. So invest the money in buying a good scanner so that scanning doesn't become a source of complete and total frustration for you, and commit to scanning everything, so that if whether it's a gas receipt and you go to take it out of your car, a year later to do taxes, and it's completely faded and illegible so you can't use it anymore, or whether it's a piece of paper that came in the mail and you haven't scanned it, now you try and access it from somewhere else and you can't do that. So commit to doing as much as you can with the time that you have available. And if you need help, ask for help. Like James, I love that you had a couple of high school students who came in and just scanned. Like, that's amazing. The thing you have to make sure is you teach everyone the right nomenclature, because people their brains are all different. They'll name things differently. So you have to make sure you write a little process, which is, here's how I want all the files named, and make sure that everybody who is adding things to your organizational system adopts the same system as well. Laura says she took over 2 bedrooms as her office.
Hmm.
That's a big office, Laura. Okay, perfect. Any other tips for organization, James, that you would want to add in just before we move on to the next question?
I think in the interest of time, let's move on to the next question. That was a great organization chat, and
Yeah.
being organized is so, so important. It's kind of one of those things where figure out how you can learn to love it. I always think about it like your home. If it's like the satisfaction of tidying up your place. It's nice to it's a good feeling because it takes mental bandwidth and redistributes it into thinking about buying your next property.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone mentioned that they would love to. Oh, Ellie said she'd love to attend your TED Talk on organization. So maybe I can do a little workshop on that too. And Mark Amiot says that James is 100% right. Carl Poulin offers fairly inexpensive courses on digital organization and time management if people don't know how to get this done. Absolutely. Sunny digitized everything 5 years ago. It's so helpful. Shredded a shopping cart full of paper. And that's the nice thing about getting rid of all our paper stuff, right? Is it enables us to organize and live in our space. Okay, so our next question was JV limited general partnerships. How do you find and structure these relationships? And then part two is what do you think are some warning signs of a relationship going sideways? So James, you've done JVs before, yes?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you find and structure those relationships and then any warning signs or challenges you've had with them?
Let's talk about the structure first, because that is such a great question. And, oftentimes there's two things that I see happen. Either someone who's planning on going really big makes a structure that's too small at the beginning without a plan on how to roll that smaller structure into a bigger structure. Or, and this is more often the case, people would come in with total overkill for their first deal. And so they, maybe you get a large corporate structure or a GPLP structure, but you're still at that point in your investment journey where you're picking up a few properties, few houses, fourplex, that sort of thing. So think about the best fit for you, because if you're only intending to pick up, you know, I would say a smaller collection of properties, 5 to 10, chances are a one-to-one joint venture will do the trick. Important thing to remember about corporations is that they're expensive to maintain. The government looks at a corporation like a separate legal and tax entity. So not only do I, James Knull, need to file a tax filing for me, James the person, my corporation has to file its own tax filing, and we have to do what's called an annual return, which is where the lawyer updates the minute books and all that kind of stuff. I won't get into the details there, but you'll be end up spending a few thousand extra dollars per year per corporation in those maintenance fees. So have a think about whether that's necessary. When I say going big, it's when you have so many properties creating so much income that the tax savings of having the corporation outweigh the cost of maintaining it. Keep in mind, there's a classification from a tax perspective called the sole proprietor. So even if you're not incorporated, you still get to do things like write-offs. You get to write off your expenses in relation to the income you're collecting in a property. So to take advantage of the tax situation of being of doing business activity, a lot of that still happens as an individual. So when it comes to setup, pick a setup that really aligns with what your journey is going to look like. And then if you start expanding more quickly than you think, have a conversation with your lawyer about how to roll everything into one superstructure. Because we see that happen all the time where, small to medium range investors will have several partnerships here, and here, and they want to roll everything into one GPLP fund. Complicated, but doable. And so, there is room to grow. But if you only ever want to buy a few properties, a smaller, more agile, less expensive to maintain structure might actually be better for you. Now, in terms of how to get that structure going, I think there's an underlying question there, which is like the chicken and egg question that afflicts all capital raising real estate investors, which is, should I find the deal first or should I find the partner first? The risk of spending all your time finding the partner first is if you don't have a deal to show that partner, then they might lose interest and move on. The flip side of the coin is if you find a deal before you have a partner, now you're scrambling in a very short window of time. That's the condition period of closing that property up to find a partner and organize the partnership. There's different people have different opinions. My personal opinion is I like to go with partner first. The reason for that is that a good joint venture agreement, which is like the legal contract that governs the relationship between the partners, is often anywhere from 15 pages is a pretty lean one up to 25 to 30 pages. So to expect somebody to read that themselves and then review it with their lawyer and then have a conversation with their lawyer about how comfortable they are signing it, if they've never seen a joint venture agreement before, is going to take a minute, and it's going to take several minutes. And to expect someone to do that level of review under the stress of the time crunch of a condition period is fairly unrealistic. When people feel rushed and stressed and confused, they're already predisposed to saying no to whatever you're proposing. So you don't want to ask somebody to say yes to something in a circumstance where they're predisposed to say no. To add that comfort level back in, what I like to do is have a lot of real estate conversations with a lot of different people. Because very often people say no to doing a deal with you because it's not good timing. Maybe their money's tied up in a GIC. Maybe their money's tied up in a different real estate deal. Maybe they're waiting for a payout on some kind of stock option from their work. So it's not that they don't want to do business, it's just that right now is not a good time. And it might be 18 months, 24 months before it is a good time. So the more people you're having more real estate conversations with, the more of a network you have of people who could want to do a deal with you when it comes up. From there, I think about what I want to target. So I build my portfolio based on properties I want to buy. I don't build my portfolio based on what potential joint venture partners say they want to buy. If you know yourself, you know your portfolio, you know your direction, then you can just take that, create a business case around it, grab a sample property that exemplifies what it is that you want to buy, and show that to people. And the people that say yes to that are now primed to do business with you when the right one comes up. The added layer that I put into that is if somebody says, yes, I would do this deal with you, then I would say, great. Part of getting ready to do this deal with me means building our structure. So while I'm out shopping for properties, trying to find the right deal, I expect my joint venture partner to be reviewing the joint venture agreement, getting any comments from their lawyer, and bringing it together. The number one place I see joint ventures fall apart isn't at the pitch where you're convincing them to do business with you. It's when they take your joint venture agreement to a lawyer who has very little real estate experience that then advises them that this is too risky. So that key moment in time, the back and forth to refine the joint venture agreement, that goes much smoother when there isn't the pressure of we need to fix this and make the deal happen because we have a week left. That added pressure often is the TSN turning point where an otherwise friendly and positive partnership turns into a no, and you're kind of left starting from square one again. So that's the process by which I have had the most success building my joint venture network is having people who are primed and ready with pre-conversation. And then when deals come up, you know who is already, ready to do that type of deal with you. Of course, I'm sure some of your minds are going to the exceptions. Well, what if a really good deal comes up that isn't quite like the one that I pitched? Or, there's a lot of what ifs. 80% of the time, the partner who you showed your ideal deal to will want to do the deal with you. If a deal that's so gosh darn good that you can't say no to it comes up and you can articulate that to your partners, they've already said yes to doing business with you. They've already said yes to the legal structure of your joint venture. And so if there's a compelling enough reason to switch tracks and try a different deal, I'm sure that'll go just fine. So that was the first question that got asked is talk about different structures and talk about how to bring those structures together and what that could look like. So if anybody has any follow-up questions, I'll just give it a minute to mellow in the chat. Otherwise, I'll start having a conversation about, I think the question was more or less, how do you know if a partnership's going sideways, or and I'm sure the comma, what do you do about it?
Yeah. I love what you're saying there, James, with making sure that your structure matches what you want to do. One of the things I see a lot with investors is they go to their accountant and they talk about wanting to set up a corporation, and the accountant deters them. They say, well, don't do that, or, you don't know if this is going to stick, or, it's going to cost you a lot of money. And I encourage new investors, have your accountant and your lawyer on a call together so that the two of them in real time are working out the best structure for you based on your personal situation. Accountants by nature are very conservative and they don't want to spend money. But there can be times, depending on what your goals are, what your plan is for the future, where it's actually very advantageous to set up the corporations. And then we need to think about it too from a liability perspective. So one of the beauties of having our corporation and having this individual structure is that it actually separates our personal assets from our real estate activities. It separates, our joint ventures to have them in different corporations. So having the people on our power team fully understanding what our goals are and what we're trying to accomplish, and then having them come up with the best possible solution for our scenario is the ideal. That's like the gold standard. And the other piece of this that I've seen that's become an issue in the past is when people try and find partners after they have a deal. So people will go on Facebook and they'll post deals, which can get us into trouble with the securities commissions in our provinces. And then they'll end up potentially taking partners who don't have the same goals or the same values or the same beliefs that you do. And then the problems start to come in when during this partnership, James is saying, well, I want to have, I want to take this building and I want to fix it up. And your partner is saying, well, no, I just want to take all the cash flow out of it and spend all of it. And James is saying, I want to set up a reserve fund at the beginning so that if there's anything that happens in the first 90 days, we're not, totally tapped out and we have no money to address it. And your partner goes, well, I don't want to put in any extra money. I don't want money sitting in a bank account. I want to divide up everything in the bank account 50-50 every month. So we need to make sure we're finding people who have the same values, the same goals, the same ideals as us. And those are the people that we're choosing for the partnership. And we're not in a situation where we're taking people who are very dissimilar to us, but partnering with them on a deal because we have no choice.
Yeah, that's those are I was trying to listen and answer questions in the chat at the same time, but
Yeah, I can see all of a sudden the chat box went boom.
yeah. Yeah, so we're tag teaming it. Now, I completely agree with the points you're making, Elizabeth. If we're going to talk about how do you know if a partnership's going sideways and what do you do about it? If you've taken the time up front to have all of those conversations that align you with the partner and sign a really, really thorough joint venture agreement, most disagreements are already spelled out in the joint venture agreement you signed. What happens if blank? What happens if blank is answered in the joint venture agreement? So it's just further conversation around the point of the more time you spend up front getting it set up properly, the smoother everything else is going to flow. Of course, that question might be coming from somebody who is saying, well, I had a joint venture agreement, but the situation that's coming up isn't really covered in the joint venture agreement, and or we didn't have a great joint venture agreement, or things are not going great. And I'll tell you, even with a great joint venture agreement, sometimes things don't go great. And I'll even speak to my own personal experience. One of the partners in one of our corporations came to us over Christmas and said, hey, you know what? I need to exit and I need the money, and it, just based on my own circumstances, and what do I need to do to get out? And in the joint venture agreement, we have what's called an early exit clause that basically says if any partner wants to leave early for any reason, then the remaining partners will buy out their shares at 75% of fair market value. Basically an inconvenience discount, because rustling up a whole bunch of cash and closing on something quickly is very inconvenient. Right there in the agreement, signed, sealed, everybody knows that that's the gig. Now, in addition to that, we were in the middle of repositioning the property. So the property's fair market value isn't very high right now because it's not a fully cooked cake yet. So we're talking to this partner saying, look, you're going to get, like, if we sent an appraiser in today, the value of your initial investment is lower plus a 25% haircut. That's what you're dealing with. That's what you signed off on. They didn't like that very much because they really wanted to get their money out. So there was a lot of conversation at play to just show them that, hey, you know what, we're not trying to be mean or unfair. Emotions were playing it, so that feeling and potentially a bit of unhappiness was playing into the equation. But ultimately, we said, look, if we've got two options. Option number one is we're going to execute the agreement exactly as it's written. Option number two is you can take the agreement to your lawyer, show them the circumstance, get some legal advice, and we can proceed from there. The one thing I have always, kind of brought into those kinds of conversations is I try to think to myself, and this is just a calculation you can run, is if you have to get lawyers involved to interpret what your agreement is, understand that in this day and age, that's probably gonna start at around $4,000 to $5,000 and go up depending on how many times you continue to disagree and continue to argue back and forth. Most lawyers, and this might be why lawyers get a little bit of a bad reputation, people. Most lawyers will, the second they start talking to you, turn the meter on And the second they start talking to you, turn the meter off. And so they've billed you at $300, $400, $500, $600 an hour for 15 minutes of chat where you're just trying to ask what your options are. And every single one of those touch points adds up. And then they had, they don't always tell you that you're being billed, and then all of a sudden you get hit with a $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 invoice for what you thought was a couple of quick questions, and then them having a couple of quick conversations with the other party's lawyer. So I always, and this was kind of how we resolved it with this client, or this partner, I should say. So we said, look, as per our joint venture agreement, if you decide to get lawyers involved and it's deemed that you were wrong and we were right, then the cost of all of the legal fees combined will come out of your half. There's a very low chance that this is going to go 50-50. So at the very least, this is going to cost you 5,000 to get the exact amount of money out that you wanted. At the most, it could cost you 10 to 15. So even though it's less money than you thought you wanted, it's better to take the money that you can instead of spending that money on legal fees. And so that calculation, like, again, we're going down a worst case scenario here, but that was what the question was asking, in my opinion, is try to figure out how to sort it out yourselves and split whatever value there is to split, because chances are people don't get upset and start disagreeing if there's an abundant amount of money. Typically, people start getting upset and disagreeing when things aren't going perfectly according to plan. And so often what we end up working with is trying to take a diminished amount of capital and fairly separate it. Nothing's going to make that feel worse than the piece that you do get getting cut again by a massive legal bill. So, in a perfect world, we have a great joint venture agreement. We have a good qualifying conversation. We've got notes about what the game plan is. Everybody's on the same page. And if a bump in the road happens, it's already been pre-planned. If that prep work hasn't been done and now we're starting to see things go sideways, often, I think, a good analogy is like a Band-Aid. Often ripping the Band-Aid off quickly is a heck of a lot better than ripping it off slowly. And Elizabeth and I talked about this last week in a conversation we had. That was her analogy, so I have to give her the credit for it. If it looks like it's starting to go really sideways, lean in with communication. Avoidant behavior makes every situation worse, especially in business. So even if it sucks to have a crappy conversation about why things are going wrong, it's always easier to have that conversation and deal with it than to avoid it. And then that other party might be getting angry, asking their friends for advice, asking their lawyer for advice, gearing up for a fight in the background. So diffuse it quickly, diffuse it often. And if it looks like there's just no way out, then go with what the agreement said and make it a quick and easy parting of ways that minimizes your legal bill.
Yeah. I agree with that 100%. And I think one of the things that we can do preemptively as well is to know your financials. So if your partner is coming to you and they don't understand the financials, or if you're not organized and you're not providing the updates, the annual updates and the information for people to file taxes and that kind of stuff, then people start to get really worried and suspicious, and they get very concerned about what's going on with their money. So one of the things we can preemptively do to ensure that JV contracts or JV agreements stay on track is to make sure that we're organized, that we have the systems and processes to support the easy communication of information. So whether you choose, a property management software where you can give access to your partners, they can log in and see, what rents have come in, what bills are here, have two people on a bank account so that both parties can see where money is going and how it's being spent. The more transparency you have, the more you're going to head off issues with between partners and that come from poor communication.
Yeah, I'll build on that. And it's definitely true that if you're the working partner, your money partner will assume you aren't doing anything if you don't tell them what you're doing. So that's like an unintended bitterness creator in partnerships, is if as a working partner, you're working your butt off all year, doing all kinds of stuff, making the property work, dealing with difficult tenants, managing contractors, blah, 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 blah. But you haven't given your partner an update in the last 12 months. And so they're just sitting there wondering what the heck is going on. So they're coming to the table thinking you're lazy. You're coming to the table thinking you're working your butt off, being unappreciated. Boom, fireworks. So
Yeah.
that's what Elizabeth means when she means transparency, is just constantly and consistently over communicate what you're doing so that they know that you're paying attention and that something's happening.
Yeah. Love it. I love it. Okay, so there was someone here who said if an investor intends to buy properties throughout Canada in a company name, where should the company be registered? I would say that your lawyer should be providing guidance on that. But my thought is if you're going to operate a corporation in multiple provinces in the country, I would probably go with a federal corporation that's based in your province and as opposed to doing a provincial one. But your lawyer would be much better able to answer that question for you. And that brings us, James, with our last couple of minutes here to the person who said, I'm starting my investment journey, planning on selling my single family in Montreal to purchase a multifamily in Toronto. Is now a good time, or would you advise waiting a year or so? I have thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're curious on my thoughts and I'm curious on your thoughts. So the
Yeah.
the two words you're going to hear the most often when you ask professionals questions in real estate is it depends. So there's limited information there that makes that decision. You know, there's no right answer, obviously, but I would say that if the game plan is to liquidate and immediately start investing, then it's what we call a lateral move in the market because you're buying out of and into a market without waiting for the market to shift in any one direction. If you're doing a non-lateral move, um, like let's say that you sell at the peak, sit on that cash, rent for a year, and wait for a dip, then there is some merit to like creating a time gap. But if you want to sell then buy, it doesn't matter if you sell then buy in a hot market or sell then buy in a cool market. As long as you're buying into the same market you're selling in, you're just redeploying capital. The second thing I would say is from an action-oriented perspective, if you have a genuine interest in becoming a real estate investor, pushing it back by a year and pushing your action back by a year is just taking your real life real estate education that you're going to get by doing and stunting your portfolio growth by a year. So I would say if you're curious about taking action, take action and start learning with your hands on in a property, because otherwise, what are you going to be doing for the next year? Maybe you pivot and start raising capital for joint ventures or something like that, which is also a really great noble pursuit. But again, given the information we're given, if the source of your capital for your deal is going to be liquidating this one property and then buying with that capital, well, I would say start looking at deals right away and make sure you're making smart, well-analyzed investment decisions that have the risk mitigated, of course. But all other factors being equal, I would say probably get started right away.
Yep. And I second that because I think that this opportunity that we have right now to buy with something of a discount, I don't see that hanging around for a particularly long time. I think eventually interest rates will start to come back down again, which means that the housing market will heat up. I think there's a lot of people sitting on the sidelines right now, waiting and watching. And unfortunately, there are some people who are in distress, some people who can't carry the higher cost of their mortgages right now, some people who they intended to do deals with private money and the cost of private money has gone up dramatically. So for a variety of reasons, I think we're especially when you're working with invested realtors like James who have a good pulse on the community, I think he's probably finding deals. And same with wholesalers out there, that there's deals available, so it just requires talking to the right people and putting the right people on your power team to get them done. Okay, so James has a very important engagement, so we're going to end right on time today.
We still do.
And
There's another. Sorry, Elizabeth, to interrupt. A question did come up, um, and then I think this could build off of the last question. I still do have 8 minutes, so I might just pull like in honor of St. Patrick's Day this week. I'll pull an Irish goodbye. So when we hit the hour, I'll just excuse myself so that we don't have to wind down. But I really appreciate everybody's time. Now, so Elizabeth, I'll hand it back to you. But if we do have a question.
yeah, no, that's fine if you want to hang out with us, and then I'll do the wrap up quickly afterwards. And I have your name, so I know who's going to win the ticket, and then we'll just hang out. We'll finish a couple minutes after the hour. So was
Perfect.
it Jeff's question about both or all names on title, or was it the one about flipping that you would like to?
Well, I think we can answer both of that. So for Jeff, do you
Fantastic.
have both or all JV partners' names on title? That question stems from who's going to be on the mortgage. So whoever's on mortgage needs to be on title. If you're doing a joint venture where some of the parties aren't going to be on mortgage, then those parties are probably going to want to register their name on title after closing using a caveat so that the legal ownership of the property is noted. That's the quick answer to that question. Now, for insight on house flipping in 2023, I am guessing, I mean, I think 2023 is it's a good time to flip houses, but and Elizabeth and I talked about this last week too, which is kind of cool. My big caution for house flipping in 2023 is tone down the leverage a little bit. And when money was cheap and interest rates were around 2%, people were running around to all kinds of private lenders, hard money lenders, B lenders, C lenders, D lenders, whatever, borrowing close to 100% of the value of the house plus renovation to do these flips. That is so much more risky when interest rates are, starting at 6%. So I would say to be a successful house flipper in 2023, be a little bit more cautious, bring a lot more cash to the table, borrow less money to give yourself a margin for the product or the project, I should say, taking a little bit longer. That's my 2023 house flipping insight.
Yep, I second that completely. And I think the other thing, I'm not a big fan on a good day of like 100% no money deals, OPM. I'm really a fan of making sure that we're protecting our investors, because one of the things that we have to keep in mind when we're taking on partners, if we're doing 100% OPM and the market goes down, it's our investors who are taking the hit. It's not us. And you do that to your investors a couple of times and nobody's going to want to invest with you. So it's important that you're thinking about what's in their best interest as well as what's in your best interest when you're looking at how you're structuring your deal. Flips in general, because they're shorter term, you should be making sure you have an alternative exit strategy if you can't sell for what you need to sell for. And we should be making sure flipping is not a strategy I would recommend for a brand new investor right now, because it's riskier due to what's going on in the market. So it would be something that, like, I have some clients who are experienced flippers, they do 8 to 10 flips a year. They're still doing flips. But if you don't have the network to set up to find properties under market value, if you're not 100% confident in your numbers and on the after repair value or the sale value, then it definitely is a riskier strategy in a declining market for sure. So hopefully that helps. The question came up anonymous, so I'm not sure who that was, but hopefully that answers your question. And James, I think we're good to wrap up.
Perfect. Well, thanks for having me, Elizabeth. Thanks everybody else. What I'll do, I'm going to put my email in the chat here for anybody that's interested in talking organization. I actually did give a presentation on bookkeeping and file organization a few months ago, and I have a recording of it. So if you want that recording, send me a DM. And then in addition to that, I built a super easy peasy lawyer friendly spreadsheet that makes your bookkeeping a breeze. So if you want my bookkeeping spreadsheet that's great for new investors, I'll send that over. I don't use it anymore because we're on QuickBooks, but when it was just me with 1 or 2 properties, it got the job done. So, and then if anybody just wants to talk about real estate, as you guys can tell, it's something I like talking about. So be in touch. Nice to meet all of you. And Elizabeth, I really appreciate being a guest on this awesome Q&A.
Thank you so much, James. And we didn't get a chance to dive into the Edmonton market. So I think you and I will do a catch up and we'll record a quick video and we'll send it out with the recording of today's webinar.
That sounds terrific.
So for those of you who are new to my community, you will be able to watch this webinar as well as other webinars I've done in the past on my YouTube channel. So feel free to pop over there and subscribe. And somebody just asked about a great property manager in Niagara Falls area. And my last webinar was with Melissa Dupuis. She is a absolute rock star property manager. And you can go and watch that webinar that I did with her on my YouTube channel as well. She is fantastic. She cares so much about her owners and her tenants. And just a quick reminder, we are coming back with the 2023 Real Estate Resilience Summit. You can get your early bird ticket today. It's 50% off the regular price of $99. So it's $49 if you want to sign up or register. It's going to be October 14th and 15th. We have heard all of your recommendations. Corey and I are so excited to make some changes, and you'll be happy to know that James is going to be a guest on it. We're going to be talking about multifamilies and markets and all those other cool things that James is such an expert in. And if you want to connect with myself or James, here's our contact information. And it's funny because Laura, I saw your comment earlier about you're frustrated trying to find contractors. I hear what you guys are saying, and I have actually asked Andrew and Ping from Property Hustlers podcast to be my guest in an upcoming webinar. I think it's going to be scheduled for July, but they are flippers. They are experienced flippers, and they're going to be sharing their secrets on how to find amazing contractors to work with, what kind of questions they ask, their inside tips on what to look for, how to choose the right people. So hopefully you can sit tight just a little bit longer, Laura, and we're going to have that for you. The other thing that I've heard a lot about is struggling with systems and processes and how to grow your real estate business in a way that makes sense, in a way that's actually sustainable. Everybody can see, yes, everybody can see my screen. Perfect. So my guest on Monday, April the 10th is going to be Megan Hubner, and I'm so excited because her specialty is creating those systems and processes that are going to support you as you grow your real estate business, and it'll give you the right start from the very beginning. So I also have a networking event coming up for anybody who is in the Toronto area and would like to connect. Michael Ponte is going to be in town from BC, so I'm excited to have the opportunity to meet him in person. And Erwin is going to be co-hosting the event with me. So it's Friday, March 31st at 7 p.m. We're going to be at the Cannery Kitchen and Social, the Crown Plaza by the airport. There is information available. Let me grab here. Can I grab it? Oh, it's not going to let me. So stay tuned. When the email goes out with the recording from today's webinar, you will have the opportunity to be able to grab tickets. I think there's only 100 tickets. So if you are interested in a fantastic networking event, we would absolutely love to see you and meet you in person. And the lucky winner from today's draw for the elite multifamily, James has chosen Sunny Gupta as the winner of today's ticket. So congratulations, Sunny. And for those of you, if you want to attend, by all means, go ahead and buy a ticket or stay tuned to my next webinars, and you'll have the opportunity again to win a ticket. Thanks so much, everyone. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. For those of you on March break, enjoy it. Have a great time. And I'll look forward to seeing you guys again on April the 10th. Bye, everybody.